Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be about the relationship between man and woman. What the relationship between man and woman was supposed to be from the beginning, and in some senses, some people's relationship it is this way. It was supposed to be a relationship between two people that complements one another, that most definitely complements God in the image He has for us, that we can come together, reproduce God's image in the way that He designed it to be. But because of the sinful nature and the disobedience away from what God designed life to be, we chose to go the route of evil. We were manipulated and deceived, and we chose that way. And because of that, we struggle amongst one another. The woman tries to control and be over the man. The man and woman are in constant competition with one another. There's no trust. There's no loyalty in some relationships. All of this is the consequences of our sinful nature. It's the consequences of our wrongdoing. It's the consequences of our disobedience and not following the ways of God. Let me dive in today, starting in Genesis chapter 2. I decided to go back because I think these things, there's so much that can be learned from these scriptures, particularly in the way that God set it up for. Now I'm coming from chapter 2, verse 4, the story of Adam and Eve, and how man and woman were meant to be in the order that God set these things up to happen. That's very important so we can avoid a struggle in life, a life of chaos and stress. Listen. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Chapter 2, verse 7. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east of Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. The Lord God made all kinds of trees growing out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. Basically, they're going into account of this garden, how it looks, what was in it. Ultimately, what it led to is Lord God took the man, and this is verse 15 of chapter 2. Lord God took the man, put him in the Garden of Eden, took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden. I think this is very important because right now what you're looking at the order in which God set up man to do. And this order is for every man's life. Every man's life. See, how do you know you're disobedient from God? It's because you're not following that order. See, instead of waiting our time and building up those things, because of our lack of knowledge, what we do is we see a woman, we want to go get married automatically. We want to go have sexual relations automatically. And we haven't put any work in it. We're 16, 17 years old, hooking up with the girl, and now we're calling her my high school sweetheart. This is my wife. We end up married at 20 years old, and guess what ends up happening? Now you're working to provide for a wife, and ultimately you have a kid together. Now you're working to provide for a wife and a kid, straining your life, putting a struggle on your life. And then at the same time, you have to come back and continue to mold your wife, continue to build your family up in the ways of God. See, but when you do it out of order, in which a lot of us have done, we put that strain and that struggle on our lives. Does that mean that you can't prevail and come out on top and get back into the ways of God? No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is you will reap the consequences of your decision. You would have to. You will have to go through that struggle. But ultimately, you can find your way back, and you can get back to the success that God has for you, because we were born to be successful. We were born to do great things. So even though we make that mistake, that doesn't stop that doesn't stop our inheritance. But what it does is gives us a struggle. What it does is create stress. What it does is it puts doubt. What it does is it allows evil to inflict pain and things on us that God never designed for us to have. But our own disobedience, doing it our own way, brought these things. But God, this is how He set it up. He set up everything for man. And he made man and told him, hey, go work it. Take care of it. So therefore, he gave a place for man. So He told man, I need you to work. I need you to take care of it. He was building the attributes of a man, responsible, a provider. He told him that I give you. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden. He was showing man how I want you to live. Just as God do to you, you do to others. God gives freely, you give freely also. He was showing man how I want you to live. How I want you to live. And not just how I want you to live, but I want you to do it in the order in which I'm giving it to you. God doesn't do things by chance. He doesn't just think things in his head and say, okay, I'm going to do this. God is specific, and He does it particularly in an order. Therefore, everything flows together. There's nothing out of sync. Everything flows together. And it says here, Lord God commanded man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's where the problem came right here, guys. Look at the life we're in today. The knowledge of good and evil. You can go on YouTube, find out the knowledge you want. You go on the web, find all the knowledge you want. Some knowledge that we don't even have no business entering into. Some knowledge God never meant for us to even have. Only knowledge that we're supposed to have in this life is the knowledge of God, His ways, so we can walk it out in His way. God is the leader of our lives. We're obedient to God. By eating off the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that means we're now trying to do it ourselves. We're now trying to be bigger than God. We're now trying to control something we were never meant to control, in a sense of as if we created it. God created us so we can be in His image, so we can be obedient in His ways. And to be in His image means you follow His order, you follow His ways, you do as He does it. That's why it's very particular on how God set this order up with man. He gave him a place to work, gave him a place to stay, gave him food. All these things were set up. He's building a structure for man so he can do what? He can eventually bring a woman into it. And then do what? Show the woman the ways of God. Show the woman the ways in which to walk in this life. Now you have two people walking in God's way, God's light. Now we can be fruitful and multiply. To do what? Raise that child up in the same way as God shown us. This is the order of life. This is how God set it up. And once we do it out of order, once we decide that we're 18 or we're grown, let me go get married. Let me go get my woman. Listen, it's meant for you to have your significant other. It's meant for you to have that woman to come in and help grow, help build what God has given you, the purpose that God has for your life. It's meant for you to have those things, but it's a time and it's an order. We live in a society now that's speeding up everything, that makes you think I need to get it now, or I'm not going to have it at all. It's a lie. It's to create anxiety in you. It's designed to get you to be anxious. So when you're supposed to be patient, you're not. When you're supposed to take your time and wait on God, you don't. And therefore, it keeps evil in control of you because you're steady missing the mark. You're steady missing God. And it keeps you in alignment with Satan's way of living. And his whole goal is, as long as he can get you to jump an inch before time, as long as he can get you to say things that you weren't meant to say, as long as he can get you to do things you're not meant to do in life, he will forever have control on you because you're not following God's way. You're not following his order. And for that reason, you're steady putting consequences on your life. You're steady not understanding why these things are happening. And then we end up in a point of blaming God as if he's the one. When he has written blueprint, he shows it in signs and wonders in this world. You see him, but you call him as luck. You see him, but you say a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. It's not luck. There's no such thing. We're floating in outer space, guys. There's no such thing as coincidence or luck. If it happens, it's a blessing. If it happens on a certain date and it's a significant, all these factors are signs and wonders. If you don't wake up, you'll continue following behind a way that only leads you to destruction. Wake up. Now, what ended up happening here is God said, do not eat off this tree of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. And this is verse 17 of chapter 2. What does he mean you're going to die? He's saying spiritually. And this is why we have to wake up. This is why we say people are asleep. This is why we're saying, guys, wake up. Because God's spirit is inside each and every one of us. But when you do wrong, you are then suppressing your spirit, God's spirit inside of you, and you're allowing evils, ways, thoughts to take over your mind, to take over your body, to the point that if God was standing in your face, or if God's signs and wonders were in front of you, you cannot see them. That's why it's saying here, you will certainly die. Spiritually, you will die. Spiritually, your spirit will be suppressed in you, that it will be like it's locked up in a cage and it can't get out. It can't come up and give you thoughts. It can't come up and show you the right way to live, God's way of living, because you are choosing, or we are choosing, the way of evil. And how is that? From lack of knowledge, lack of who we are as a people, lack of purpose in this lifetime. We have to wake up and understand, as man and as woman, we have a relationship that is supposed to be of love, of peace, of growth, of understanding, of God leading us, being fruitful and multiplying. That's all it's supposed to be. Never is it supposed to be of anger, of struggle, of disobedience, of divorce, of hatred, of fighting. When you have a relationship between a man and woman, if it becomes that, you are out of the will of God. You are following behind the ways of evil. You are following behind the ways of yourself, not the ways of God, because the ways of God does not produce that type of fruit in your life. You have to wake up and recognize what is going on. Why am I getting these consequences? What has happened? What am I doing wrong? We have to dig deep, and you have to come back to God. Take your spirit, take God's spirit that He breathed the breath of life. If you understand what that means, it says here in the beginning. Let's go back to it. It says God created man. Let's go back here. Let's see here. It is back in chapter 2. Verse 7. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. What do you think he was breathing inside of him? Because at that point, he became a living, a living being. That spirit was entered into him. God's spirit was put inside of him. That to breathe the breath of life means God's spirit was breathed into man. Before that, man was dead spiritually. He was dead, period. Could not move. But when God breathed the breath of life into him, he breathed his spirit inside of man. And because of that reason, man became a living being. Because of that reason, man was created to walk in God's image. But the moment man decided to do what? Be disobedient and walk his own way and choose his own way away from God, that same breath of life was suppressed and it died inside of him. And at that point, he allowed evil to take over. Man and woman. And that's why here in today's time we have the chaos we have, because we're not walking in the ways of God. Does God's way still exist? Yes. There are a lot of people walking it out. There are a lot of people touching and influencing people's lives on a daily basis. See, but we live in a society that doesn't want you to know that. That doesn't want you to know that real side, that powerful side. Because why? We've allowed evil to take control. We've allowed evil all this time to build up something that will blind you, that will keep you from knowing who you really are, how powerful you really are, who really made you, and your true purpose in life. And it's steady, and evil is steady trying to create this illusion, this fantasy for you to continue to break away from who God made you and created you to be, so you can embrace something, so you can think you were meant to be something else. How are you meant to be something else when you're born what you are born? And that's how powerful Satan is. See, a lot of people don't recognize this. Before man ever existed, Satan already did. Before, you got to understand, Satan was God's right hand man. Satan was there doing God's work. He knows the ins and outs of who God is. What's his purpose in life? What's our purpose in life? He knows everything about us. See, Satan's been dealing with mankind, human beings, since the beginning, since day one. See, we're just being born to a game that's already been structured. You got to come to God, guys. Get your instructions, get the blueprint, and understand man and woman, you're created to work together. You're created to do great things together under God's law. Not under Satan's, not under evil. Because once you do, you will then see, opposed to you being together, you're now turning against each other. You're now doubting and second guessing one another. Once you start doing that, reevaluate the relationship and see where you took the wrong turn and put it back together. Because though we make mistakes, God made us. God created us. And he's waiting for us to choose him so we can get back in alignment. Guys, I love you. I'm going to end this off right now. There's more. I could keep going in this because it's very deep. It shows a lot. It tells a lot about life, who we are as people, the way we should walk, and understand that there's an order to it. Don't jump the order. You will bring stress and pain on yourself. See, that stress and pain is there so it can get you back into alignment. Because once you start making these moves and you start choosing evil's way and being disobedient away from God, you're putting yourself in a hypnosis state to the point where you spiritually die. And because of that, you can't see God's way at all. So you have to go through a struggle so you can be shifted back in alignment with God. So you can be joggled and woken back up. Just as a person is sleeping, you shake them. That's what that struggle represents. A struggle represents a shock, waking you up. We got to wake up, guys. God bless you. I love you guys. Hey, and don't forget to embrace the struggle. That's what a growth is. See you later.